In the spirit of reconciliation, Law Squared acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today.
Hi everybody and welcome to the Law Squared ScaleUp series, your weekly playbook for scaling and exiting with confidence. I'm Katie Higgins, Head of Corporate here at Law Squared, and across this series we are breaking down the issues that face growing businesses. Think money, people, structure, governance and risk. Each week I'm joined by industry experts for short, practical conversations designed to give founders and business leaders clear insights that they can actually use. No jargon, no theory, just real-world guidance to help you scale smarter, faster and stronger. And if you're thinking about your next phase, which might be an exit, this series is also for you. If you have questions throughout this series, please pop them in the chat group and we will get to them as soon as we can. In our fourth episode, I am joined by Jodie Imam. Jodie is passionate about helping tech businesses start and grow. Jodie is a founder, an angel investor, an advisor, and a non-executive director. Currently, she is co-founder and CEO of Attractive Ventures, a tech company that exists to help founders unlock possibility with alternative capital. Previously, she co-founded the two-sided marketplace Occasional Butler, which was acquired by rival Airtasker. On top of that already impressive resume, Jodie leads the SBE Australia not-for-profit that accelerates women-led businesses. And she was a director at Startups at the Wade Institute. Welcome, Jodie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get stuck into it. We've got 15 minutes and today's episode is all about taking on debt as a growth lever for businesses. I introduced Tractor a little bit in that introduction, but I'd love to hear from you. What's Tractor all about? Why did you start it and how do things typically work?
Yeah, great. So, and thank you for that kind introduction. And that the background of being I founded myself multiple times and an ecosystem leader and working with probably hundreds of founders in the lead up to Tractor. And that's how I met my co-founder, Matt Allen. And he had a similar sort of path and he'd had one business that he sold, another one he closed down like I have, ecosystem roles and investing and working with heaps of founders. And so it was his vision initially that when he was at AWS and working with VC-backed founders that he realised that model works for some companies and not others. And, I guess the VC model will back 1 in 100. And so what happens to the other 99 companies that need growth capital? And so that's why we call Tractor Ventures, because we're not for the rockets, and rockets are exciting and some of them land on the moon, but they're also very expensive and a lot of them blow up along the way. And I guess Matt especially saw a lot of that firsthand, and I've also seen that. And so we wanted to create a different type of capital that founders could use to grow without having to commit to, the landing on the moon, basically. And so this is capital that's non-dilutive, so no need to give up any ownership or control. Like we don't take board seats or anything like that. It's also unsecured. So the real intention was that we take the risk away from the individual and their family and put the risk into the business. So it's basically like a bank loan. So it's a standard term loan. We also do a line of credit, which I like to call sleep at night money. And that's money that's there, accessible, but you don't need to draw it until you really need it. And then we also do R&D funding. So it's really capital that you can access very quickly and get a return on really quickly because you're putting it into activities like sales and marketing, putting on people that are going to bring in revenue, those sort of activities that bring in revenue fairly quickly. That's when you should be thinking about this type of capital. And so we've now deployed over $120 million to over 250 scaling companies and, growing really fast. We've just had 2 record quarters and, we've been educating for 5 years since we launched about using debt, thinking about debt. And I guess in our ecosystem, it's a new thing in this country. In the UK and in the US, it's very established and most scaling companies will use debt, just like any company on the ASX or any SME uses it. It's just in our little world, it just hasn't been available, I guess, and so it's just been an education piece.
Amazing. I absolutely love that analogy that you're called Tractor Ventures because you're not rockets. And having worked in capital raising for close to a decade now, people in Australia or businesses in Australia, they really think that giving away equity is their only option. And it's been really difficult to watch businesses, enter into terms that are really unfavourable that, maybe if they knew about alternatives, it would have changed the conversation and decisions for them. So I absolutely love what you're doing. What companies do you generally say are businesses that are more well-suited for debt-based scaling, and which ones do you reckon we should probably avoid it? Is it for everyone is the question? Or can everyone go down that path?
I think it is for everyone, but it's not for all the time. It's not for every purpose. So we back companies, all sorts of companies in our ecosystem. So deep tech, tech-enabled like e-commerce, but also service providers and professional services companies too. So recruitment agencies, marketing agencies, other professional services, consulting businesses that are growing quickly. And so it's not really like whether you're a type of company that can use it. It's more using it for the right activities. And sometimes selling shares early on is something you need to do because you have to have revenue to be able to take on debt. And the other thing is, what we are finding is when we're talking to founders, they really know they've got that early product market fit. So they know that what they're doing works. They've got some fairly strong conviction that what they're doing is working. So if they just put more fuel on the fire, then it's going to attract more revenue. It's more if you're experimenting, if you think, okay, this is working in Australia, let's go and do it in the UK, that's an experiment, right? You don't know if that's going to work or not. And so debt is not the best source of growth capital for experiments. So if it's more of an experiment, then that's when that's an equity risk, because if it just totally fails and you're stuck with a loan that you've got to pay back and the interest, it can be crippling.
Yeah. And I guess that leads me to my next question. Tractor Ventures, what are the companies that you won't generally enter into debt agreements with? Too early, too late? Yeah. Is it just experimental? What are the factors that you assess when you're looking to look at giving the money?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest reason that we have to decline an application is that the founder has left it too late. They've come to us when they've basically run out of money and they need to make payroll in a couple of weeks, and they're like, that's when we can't. Like, we really ideally want to see 6 to 12 months runway. We want to see that the founder's really strategically thinking about their growth and the uses of capital, and that they're planning for, if they don't put some more money in, they're not going to grow as fast, ideally. Or we do a lot of bridge financing, so they know, say, 2027 they're going to go do a raise. They know they've got 12 months runway, but they want to get their revenue numbers up and all that sort of thing. So if they put some more money in now, extends the time they've got, puts more money into the revenue generating activities, and then when they go on raise next year, they've got a much stronger point of leverage. So the biggest things are running out of money. Sort of, that's when we just can't. Like, we do what our lens is are you going to be able to pay this money back? Ultimately, that's what we're looking for, because unsecured lending, so if they can't pay it back, we don't get our money. And so, like, that's really the lens that we have, which is quite different to what an equity investor is looking for.
Absolutely. And I love that idea of using it as bridge finance as well. Yeah. I think a lot of companies that are coming to us at the moment with the current state of the market, valuations just aren't there for them, or maybe the company's growth just hasn't been there. So using that to just stretch out the period before they go for a bigger capital raise can make all the difference, instead of selling your soul for a really unfavourable valuation.
That's right. And also, it takes a lot of time to raise equity capital. Like, it becomes a full-time job, and it might take 6 to 12 months. And in that time, you're not focused on the customer anymore. You're focused on your investor pitching, and then what can happen is the revenue starts to drop because you're not focused on it, and then it's even harder to raise the capital. So,
it's my favourite consideration. It's my favourite conversation to have with founders. I always say, like, do you know how long it takes to capital raise? And they always say, a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. And you say, no, this is a full-time job, and it can take 6 to 12 months to do a proper capital raise. So having that bridging finance is that way to keep the business tracking along and getting them to the goal.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to change kind of tact at the moment. So a lot of businesses that might be listening might be thinking about an exit and selling. How do you find that acquirers typically view debt on the balance sheet? When does it help? When does it hurt? Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, no. I mean, I think at the end of the day, most of us taking the leap into starting a business want to have an outsized return, right? Like we're taking a big risk, we're sacrificing salary for a long time, you know, a lot of this stuff, we want an outside. So we're crazy to think that any of us don't want to, you know, have an outsized return at some point. And yeah, I literally just had a great chat for our podcast that we do about with James Cameron from Airtrade, just talking about debt and how it's perceived. And I think this, you know, it's so common in other markets, not just overseas, but in other markets, like as I mentioned, the ASX, like most businesses use debt and equity to leverage growth. That's just like normal. But in our little bubble, it doesn't seem to be, well, it hasn't been available. So that's why. But sophisticated investors and acquirers will see it as a positive because it's the right type of capital to use if you're using it for the right purpose. So, I don't see it as a bad thing at all.
Can I just drill down on that a little bit more? I'm really interested, and a lot of listeners will. Why has Australia been so late for the take-up?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Well, our ecosystem's new, right? So when I started Occasional Butler, it was 2012, and there are, I think, 5 VCs across the country. There were like 2 co-working spaces. There was like a few meetups. So like that wasn't that long ago. And so it's just the stage that the ecosystem's at. It's finally got big enough. Like if Tractor tried to launch 10 years ago, I don't think there wouldn't have been enough. There wouldn't have been enough startups for us to be able to. That would have been further enough in their journey to be able to support it and all that sort of thing. So it's just the maturing of the ecosystem that's now allowed us and other providers to come in and provide this type of alternative capital.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, working in startups myself, it's been really great over the last 10 years to see, you know, the rise of CSF raising, so crowdsourced funding. You've seen the rise of convertible notes, which, you know, you're right, 15, 20 years ago, debt capital, safe notes, they just weren't that thing. So we're so slow on the take up, but we are growing. And I think, you know, not a lot of great things came out of COVID, but one thing is we did see such a rise in startups, and I think that's been great for our acceleration of our ecosystem.
Yes.
We only have one more minute. If you're a founder considering debt in the next 6 to 12 months, what are 2 things that they should do now to prepare? Come and talk to you. Is there anything in the company that they should prepare for?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I always will say, even if you're not generating, you know, for us, you sort of need to be doing around $50,000 a month on average in revenue for it to make sense. But even if you're not at that point, like we are always happy to talk. The best advice I'd give is just to talk to as many people as you can and understand all your options. And even to the point of applying, if you are at that revenue level, apply for funding with us and understand where in the detail we might not be able to fund yet, or what we might be able to, how much money might be available to you. So that would be the biggest piece of advice, is just find out, know your options.
Love it. And then finally, what's one myth about debt for startups, scale-ups that you would love to debunk?
I think we touched on it, and it really is that I hear it all the time, but if I take on debt, will that impact my next raise? And for sophisticated, and that's why I wanted to interview James and talk about it, because for sophisticated investors, absolutely not. They know it's smart. They want to save dilution too along the way. And if you're thinking strategically about the different types of capital you use for the different activities, then it's a positive. It's a positive. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that takeaway about not diluting your capital table by giving away equity. Have a look at debt. It's a much. It sounds like a great way to explore. Great thing to explore.
Yeah,
Jodie, so much. That's going to wrap up today's episode of the Law Squared Scale Up series. So it's been a pleasure speaking with you. We hope today's conversation has given listeners some really practical insights about making sense of debt and how balancing this with equity can contribute to business growth. if done correctly, and then eventually help you scale if that's on the cards for 2026. If you found this episode to be useful, please subscribe, share it with your friends, your colleagues, or just reach out to the team at Law Squared or Tractor Ventures. I've worked with the team at Tractor before, and they're absolutely fantastic. So we'll share our details in the chat group. We'll also be available on LinkedIn, websites, or you could just reach out to Jodie and myself. Next week, we're going to be diving into private equity and venture capital, so stay tuned. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy your day.